I'd like to greet each and every one of you and say thank you in advance to everyone watching us. So I'd like to try to talk about the traditional Gourmantché cloth. Of the Gourmantché, its use, and often its function. So for that, let's say that in the past, fabric was rare, and weaving thread was obtained exclusively through the manual spinning of cotton by older women. In most communities, clothing was considered common property that people could borrow to wear when needed and then return. Among the Gourmantché, then, the trade of weaver was practiced by certain clans or families and passed down from generation to generation. As great experts in traditional textiles, the weavers served the royal courts and the whole community for special clothing needs. The use of each type of cloth was governed by social codes. The making of traditional cloths was surrounded by prohibitions, and their use or wearing was subject to rules. In fact, only men were allowed to weave the cloths, while women were responsible for spinning the cotton to produce thread, whose dyeing was reserved only for certain families or clans. And the use and wearing of the cloths depended on the happy or unfortunate events of everyday life. In general, the thread used, and the traditional cloth produced are of different kinds and serve different functions. In fact, there are several types of traditional Gourmantché cloths, and they take different names depending on the thread used and the patterns chosen. Each type of cloth, therefore, played a specific role. Each activity or happy or unfortunate event in the daily life of the Gourmantché corresponded to a particular type of cloth or specific attire. This includes births, celebrations, the initiation of young people, various kinds of work, engagements, weddings, competitions, funeral rites, and so on. In certain parts of Gourma, there are specific distinctions in the naming of the cloths through the particles boluri. When you hear boluri, it actually refers to when it becomes traditional in use, when industrial threads are used and the weaving is done with modern equipment. And when you hear gulin, it refers to everything that is traditional. These cloths are traditional cloths woven from traditional thread. So right now, that's the distinction you're going to hear. Bulur, you'll hear, for example, Bulur Parabu. Gulin Parabu, Bulur Kinkiongu, Gulin Kinkiongu. Okay? So that's what it's about. It was actually a kind of distinction that made it possible to tell whether the cloth in question was made entirely in the traditional way or not. So nowadays, given the mixing, the cultural mixing, and technological progress, many practices once observed in the weaving of traditional cloths have evolved. In fact, weaving has now become an activity open to everyone. Industrial threads and dyes are being used more and more with modern looms, which make the finished product much more durable and also reduce the time needed to complete it. On the other hand, anyone can wear any type of cloth now, regardless of the occasion. Finally, nowadays, for reasons of employment and livelihood, everyone, without exception of sex or clan, can work as a weaver. To that, it should be added that for stylistic effect, several cloth designs are created with customers' tastes in mind. So let's look at a few models or types of traditional Gourmantché cloths. Well, we're going to continue our discussion about the Gourmantché cloth. So here we have the cloth, Palbeuambu, in the plural tepobuani, which is a cloth entirely black in color because it's made from black thread. In the past, it was used on the occasion of births and on the occasion of funeral rites. So any young girl or Jafano was expected to obtain one. To use it when giving birth to her first child. On top of that, in the case of deaths, that is, each eldest son or each eldest daughter in a family was supposed to get one and keep it aside while waiting when they felt that one of the parents was being overtaken by old age. So then, in the event of death, they would hand over this palbuambu to the undertaker, and it would be used to make the garment. There you go. And now they also used this another cloth that is the opposite of that palbauambu, which is pienli, to make the undergarment for the deceased. There you go. So that said, in either case, in these cases, that cloth played a hygienic role for the woman who had just given birth, for hemorrhaging the 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 kepa, the possibilities of leaking fluid, of wetness that soaks through, and so on and so on, for protection as well. There you go, as a covering, as a modesty covering, as wrapping, and as clothing as well. So, the next cloth we are going to talk about is the one called Lipenly. Lipenly, which means white. So Lipenly is the opposite, the antagonist of Mopalgumb. So the Lipenly is off-white in color. So it is essentially made of wire. And generally. And the pagbipapal, pien fanli. That is truly what is done with the traditional thread. So one often hears the term gule pienlik. So on what occasion is it used? On two particular occasions. And as I said, it varies depending on the localities in the Gurma. So on the occasions of deaths and introductory camps. So in the event of a death, it is used to make the deceased's breeches kubandele, singular, or lipian, lipian bandele, or in the plural, akubanda, and so on, with a view to someone's dignified burial. And pure pienli is also used to make the large breeches worn by initiates. There you have it, the kombandel. Or the agbobanda, worn by the young men upon leaving the initiation camp, the traditional school for indigenous values among the Gourmantché people. Good. So the shirt or bubu of the initiates. The quan, specifically the quan yuabeli, consists of wide white bands alternating with large bands of red, black, green, or blue, depending on the family. So that means that when you see young people wearing it, you see black, white, black, white. That is what constitutes their shirt, that right there. So according to for the families, you will always have the white, either white and red, white and black, white and green, or white and blue. So it's the shirt and the breeches or bangbu in which they dance can be all white. So for the initiated, that is also what pienlik is. Thus, this loincloth or pienli serves as underwear for the deceased, but also as a form of protection for the young initiate and even for the dead, while also functioning as a garment for initiates emerging from seclusion. So that is what could be said about the Lipenly cloth. As I said, it varies from one locality in the Gurma to another. Now let's look at the cloth called Palbeu Ali. The Palbeu ollie cloth is made of small rows of blue threads and of ngalgaribuano, or as it is often called, nalgari obomboa, alternating with wider rows of black threads. There you have it. Palbeu alley was used on 2 occasions, particularly during traditional weddings in Niga, in Pogana, or during the initiation camps of Kowankari Tiore. Well, so on that occasion, for example, during weddings, one of the sisters of the girl's mother who is admitted, and during the initiation camps, one of the sisters of the mother of the young person admitted to the camp has the duty to offer him or her a cloth. What is called Palbeu Ali. There you go. Or also called Bubuna Palbu. So it will be used to be worn. So, and in the case of marriage, it is used to seal the traditional marriage, and it is part of the elements of the bride price that the suitor's family comes to give. So carrying this out in either of these cases is proof of social success and dignity. Thus, Palbeu Ali serves as a symbolic price or exchange, as a garment or as a means of protection against bad weather. And when we consider each of the 2 events mentioned above, so that is it regarding the cloth called Palbeu Ali. Now let's move on to the cloth called Kienkin buwangu, plural Kienkin buwandi, which is made up of wide black bands alternating with other wide bands, each made up of small rows of black and blue threads. So we'd already talked about those kinds of threads. In the past, it was used during traditional weddings and childbirth. So at the stage of the spouse gari, that is, when the young woman, the new bride, leaves for the marital home, the parents on the father's side perform blessings, a blessing ritual. And on that occasion, the young woman receives the emblematic Kienkin buwangu from her biological father, which she uses to cover herself before joining her husband's family. So once they arrive at the husband's new home, his mother takes back that Kienkin buwangu and keeps it carefully. And then, when the woman gives birth to her first child, that's when the cloth comes out again. It's on the 7th day, when she leaves the seclusion hut to appear in public after giving birth. So if we look at it, this cloth is proof of a father's love for his daughter and of the uncle's love for their daughter, but also proof of a dignified departure for the new bride because she left without having been deflowered, harmed, or made pregnant before marriage. And this cloth also serves as a hygienic aid because it's used for a woman who has just given birth, and you can see the level of hygiene that's needed. It also provides protection for the woman who has just given birth. So that's what can be said about the Kienkin buwangu in Gourmantché culture. Good. So let's continue our discussion this time with the Quinquin moango. So after the Quinquin buwango, which is the black one, we now see the Quinquin moango, which is the red variant. made up of wide black bands, alternating with wide bands composed of threads and sets of small red and black bands. So here as well, there are several variants of Quinquin moango with modern influences and the possibility of adapting to styles or to the tastes of customers. So it is used during traditional weddings and during childbirth or births. So it is one of the items in the bride price, brought to the family of the new bride. There you go. It is the mother who rightfully receives that Quinquin moango. So it goes to her when it is included in the bride price. When people arrive, they hand it over to her. It is the biological mother's share. So this is called buwangu. So when she receives it, she will give it as a gift to one of her sisters, younger or older, thus informing her that her daughter has had a suitor and is now married. So that is to say, now the girl, the young woman, will receive the said Quinquin moango from her aunt only when she gives birth to her first child. So it will serve her in several ways. So let's say that this cloth serves as a means of union between families for marriage agreements, while also serving as a hygienic and protective covering for the woman who has just given birth and for her child. So that's what could be said about the 5 moango. So now let's look at the Palpa gambo. The cloth called Palpa exists in several forms. So in this center, we'd have 4 types of Palpa. The red one, or Palpa mono, is made of small bands of red and black threads. In Palpa bono, the black one is made from small bands of blue threads and small bands of black threads. Then there's Palpa piano, or the white one, which is woven from small bands of black and white threads. And finally, Palpa gambo, which we're going to look at. Indeed, Palpa gambo is made up of small alternating bands of black threads and small variegated black and white bands. In the past, Palpa gambo was worn under certain conditions and prescriptions. First, it had to be said that you had to have a reason. Either you want to get a husband, you want to make a marriage conquête, a marriage match, you want to be a competitor, you want to compete for a chieftaincy, you want money, you want material possessions. So you would go consult a geomancer who gives guidance about the weaver who will bring you luck about the locality of that weaver, where he lives, and the day when you will go and pick it up. So the geomancer will tell you that, and then you see the person concerned so that he can weave it for you. Not just anyone wore it, and not just anyone wove it. This cloth was moreover woven in the bush. There you have it. So, Palpa gambo is imbued with a power of invulnerability and is worn by a given social class, and it is made only in the bush, exclusively by men whose mystical power was recognized by society. So, Palpa gambo allows the wearer to face or ward off any misfortune or enemy, and to bring power, luck, and success in the quest that he wants to undertake. So, however, nowadays all the prescriptions surrounding Palpa gambo have been relaxed to the point that it is now woven even by women in the compound and worn by anyone. So that's what could be said about this Palpa gambo. So the Enabani cloth is made of wide, all black bands, alternating with wide bands made up of a series of narrow, bright red threads, narrow black threads, and narrow blue threads, as shown in the image. It is used during traditional weddings. In fact, it is part of the bride price. The Lituali, this cloth, whether in the form of buluri palbu or gunu palbu, rightfully belongs to the birth mother, Bina, of the newly married woman, which is why it is called gunu Enabani. So in the past, this cloth gave dignity, respect, and honor to anyone who wore it and entered a market. So from then on, when people saw her, they knew, that woman had a daughter who was able to preserve herself until marriage, and the bride price came, and she received what was rightfully hers, and she wears it. So it was a great joy. And those whose daughters had gone astray, who were who had become pregnant before marriage would hide. And that woman, that is a glory. So, because of that, it was the status of a worthy mother who had a daughter able to conduct herself properly without accidentally becoming pregnant before having a home of her own. To wrap up this discussion about cloths, about a few traditional Gourmantché cloths, let's look at the cloth called Dian. The Dian cloth is made of wide alternating bands of blue and white threads, and at regular intervals, small bands of green threads and small bands of red threads. So it is used, well, it was used during major gatherings and on exceptional occasions by well-off young men who had a bit of style in the way they dressed. So that was for showing off and for showing that you were young and for showing your youth, your prestige, and your wealth. So young people wore it. There wasn't any real prohibition against it as such. And it was also for going to major gatherings, to be seen, to strut around. So it allowed the wearer to show off, to be noticed, or to display prestige and a vibrant youthfulness. There you have it. So that's what the Dian cloth was used for. And that brings our discussion of a few traditional Gourmantché cloths to a close. So as I said, this can vary from one locality to another across Gourma. The names can vary from south to north, that is, in the areas of Bogandé, Fada, and Diapaga, and that can vary. And the occasions when it is used can vary as well. So I thank everyone. So as we were asked, it is by speaking, by talking, that each of us can make our own small contribution. We are not great experts, just contributing to knowledge of Gourmantché culture. And thank you.